Welcome to the season 6 premiere of Better Together, sharing our lupus stories. I'm so excited to be here. My name is Chanel Gabriel, and we are all the way live and talking about lupus. Now, we are here with some empowering tools to help people with lupus live their best life. So now you can be with us. Put some hearts in the chat as we welcome to the stage my virtual co-host, the esteemed Dr. Michaela Bayard. Welcome.
Hey, Chanel. It's so great to be back.
Definitely. I missed my Better Together family.
Yes.
Yeah. So what have you been up to since last season?
So much. I stay busy. May was a busy month with lupus awareness. We did a lot in Queens, as, really everyone was doing a lot. And now I've just been captivated by the World Cup. So that is what I'm trying to watch all the time.
Exactly. At World Cup. Let's go, Knicks. I'm saying Knicks game 5. We knew it. So yeah, there's a lot of sports energy going on right now wherever we are in New York City in the tri-state area. But as far as for me, like outside of some performances and kind of doing Carnegie Hall again, and I did a prayer
No big
breakfast,
deal.
keeping it light. But a prayer breakfast with Advent Health in Orlando, which was like huge. But the biggest thing that's happened since our last season was we won the 2026 Scope Patient Engagement Award. This wonderful show, that's Savine DaCosta, who is our champion over at Biogen, making sure that this happens. And yeah, we won. And it was because we were connecting with patients in an innovative and caring way. And so, yeah, it was a great thing.
This is such an esteemed award. It's a major accomplishment for all the hard work we've been doing. And we couldn't have done any of this without our amazing viewers. And what is even more amazing is that we got to 1 million cumulative views for this show. So
Yes.
just amazing.
Yeah, over now we're going to be over 1 million because we have a whole new season happening. But agreed. Thank you so much, all of you viewers, for making this happen. And if for some reason you missed any of the past episodes, feel free to go to youtube.com at Better Together Lupus /live. Okay. And you can see all of them. You just keep going, keep enjoying.
So Chanel, I know this season will be even more amazing. We're going to continue connecting with really inspiring lupus advocates and health professionals. I'm just excited to see what we have in store.
Most definitely. Yes, it's going to be good.
So tonight's topic is connecting the dots, lupus and family history. And I know we often focus on, physical features we inherit. Some people say, I look just like my dad. But
it's funny. I look like my mom. So.
It's probably better. I don't know. But there are other things and trends that we really want to think about in our family tree that can be helpful both before and after a lupus diagnosis. And as a rheumatologist, I think that having diagnoses in your family can help people get diagnosed earlier. But it can also, we can learn a lot about what someone's lupus looks like. So we have some real experts that are going to be helping us. But Chanel, tell us about yourself. Is there anyone in your family who has lupus or an autoimmune disease?
Not that I know of. And I mean, I really don't know. And there are a few reasons for that. And I do think we're going to explore some of that with our guests once we get in conversation. So I think we should just move into meeting them. Let's meet our guests and we're going to bring them in. All right. First, let's welcome to the stage Ayanna Hoskins. We are so excited to have you here. What's up?
Hi.
Hi.
I'm super excited to be here.
So glad to have you. Well, Ayanna is a proud and loving mom, wife, and lupus warrior. She recently completed her bachelor's degree and is getting ready to start that master's program in clinical mental health counseling. I know we need more mental health counselors in the world today. Then she's also a board member of Lupus Together New Jersey, which is a great organization doing a lot of really awesome things in the New Jersey area. And I have a picture of you at the recent event, the Kentucky Derby. Yeah, the sneaker ball. You look great. You look great, girl.
Thank you.
Now, her fun fact is that Ayana is apparently a self-proclaimed biopic and documentary addict. If there's like a real story behind it, she's already watched it twice. She's watched it on the multiple platforms. She's looked up everything and she knows everything about the real person. So I'm curious, what's the latest binge? Is there something you're watching now? I'm just curious.
Well, on the biopic side, me and my husband ran to go see Michael. So that just was everything for me. But then you can find me on the couch at night when I can fit some time in, finding a Netflix documentary. And I just watched, what was it called? The Crash, the one where the girl crashed her boyfriend and his friend.
All right, so you gave me something to watch. I'm gonna have to check out this weekend. Okay,
that was my latest.
Oh. Well, thank you so much. We're so glad to have you here. All right. Now, our next guest is my sis, Judith N. Mills. Got to give that the initial there. Judith Mills, welcome to the group. Welcome to the stage. Hi, my dear.
Hi. How are you?
I'm glad. I'm glad to have you. Oh, Judith is a biomedical scientist, a professor, a TEDx speaker, and a patient advocate dedicated to health equity and empowering individuals living with chronic illnesses. She's a disability advocate. Now, she's the founder and president of Butterfly Walkers Incorporated, a nonprofit focused on lupus awareness, education, and support. And a fun fact about Judith, now she tried to tell us her fun fact was that she loves to dance, which is true. But my fun fact about Judith, because Judith is the person that actually got me into advocacy many, many moons ago, is that she is the queen of self-care. Okay, y'all don't understand. She doesn't go anywhere without like her whole kit. Like she has heating pads on deck. She has all the things that keep her comfortable. If you're like, hey, do you got this? I got that. Let me give you one. That is my fun fact about Judith. Am I wrong, Judith?
Hi, thank you for that. I gotta be prepared because I hate being uncomfortable. I will fall apart when I'm not, put together. I hate being cold. So I make sure the heater is my best friend. I make sure I have a heating pad everywhere I go, no matter the weather, because radars do not tell you when it's going to come on. So
we're going to do an episode where you bring us through your bag.
Yes.
Well, we're so happy to have you here. Thank you so much. And so next we are bringing in some genetics expertise to the building. We have Dr. Ashira Blazer. Welcome to the stage.
Hi.
Now, we're so excited to have you. Dr. Ashira Blazer is a rheumatologist, but not only a rheumatologist, she's a geneticist that focuses primarily on autoimmune diseases, including lupus, as well as another disease that is it scleroderma? I cannot pronounce that word. Oh my goodness. Oop, Ashira, you are on mute. Let's get you back on. Let's get you off of mute.
I've been struggling back here with sound. APOL1 kidney disease.
APOL1 kidney disease. I could not remember. I don't know why I couldn't remember that. But yes, you are over and you took all of your lovely abilities and moved all the way to the DMV area where you are supporting patients at the University of Maryland. And you're also running a whole lot of research there. I just want to say thank you so much for the work that you do and for also like really showing some love on your Instagram page, because it's so good to hear the science part of the work that you do in all of these different spaces. And her fun fact, and I'm going to say this, is Dr. Blazer, you got a Blazer lab?
I do. I have a Blazer lab.
A whole lab named after her. That's amazing.
We miss you in New York, but you're doing amazing things.
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, I also miss New York, and I wish I was in New York. Now I'm watching all the things that are happening in New York, and I'm like, I was there.
Oh my goodness. All right. Well, we're so glad to have you. And now, Dr. Michaela, will you introduce our Spotlight on Research
Of
segment
course.
guest?
Of course, Chanel. Let's welcome Dr. Megan Lockwood back to Better Together.
Yes.
Hey guys, thanks for having me.
Of course, nice to see you again. So Dr. Lockwood is a practicing rheumatologist and an assistant professor of medicine at Georgetown University. She is director of the Lupus program and is actively involved in clinical research trials where she is working hard to help bring new treatments to people living with not just lupus, but systemic sclerosis. And her fun fact, and I didn't know this, she served in the United States Peace Corps as a science teacher in Ghana for over 2 years. So you have to tell us about that experience.
Well, I gotta say, I'm rooting for the Black Stars. Last time I was there, Ghana, the World Cup was in Africa for the first time. The Black Stars made it so far, and so I'm rooting for them tomorrow. They're gonna wipe Panama.
Yay!
So awesome. So awesome. And that also sounds like a really inspiring and exciting season of your life to have done that and then move into this world. But we're so excited to have you and so excited to have all of our guests. Now, if you are watching out there, we want you to be a part of the show. Okay. So thank you so much. We are happy to know where you are tuning in from. Please use the chat. Who's in the house? Let us know, or continue to use that chat to ask questions, chime in with your thoughts, show love. But Dr. Michaela, without further ado, we spent a lot of time just chatting with everybody at the top of the show. Let's bring in our first guest.
Okay, so put some purple hearts in the chat as we welcome Ayana Hoskins.
Hello.
So, hi, welcome back, Ayana. Thank you so much for joining us. And as we always start out, please share a little bit about your lupus story.
Okay, so I was diagnosed with lupus when I was 17. I was a senior in high school, minding my good old business on my senior trip. And when I came back, I had swollen knuckles. And I had never experienced anything like that before. Throughout my life, I've always been the sickly child. So I was in and out of the hospital for different reasons. But this time, this was something different. I had never experienced anything like this. And when they took blood work, they found a rheumatoid factor. So they told me it was either rheumatoid arthritis or lupus. And neither one really, I was just like, okay. So when they did blood work, I lit up like a Christmas tree, and I have been diagnosed with lupus since. So my journey throughout from diagnosis to now has been calm. I've had some high times where there was a lot of activity. Within, I would say, the past 4 years, there's been a lot more activity. So we're still navigating and still figuring out how to, get through this journey. So.
Well, thank you for sharing. And yeah, that's a hard time. Your senior year, you're really not thinking about anything, and for this to hit, definitely a challenging time. But glad to hear you've been doing up and figuring things out. But prior to being diagnosed, did you know any specifics about your history with your family history with lupus, and what did you later learn?
So as far as I know, there was no family history of lupus. There was no family history of anything that remotely looked like lupus except for MS. My aunt has MS, which is multiple sclerosis. For those who don't know, she had that, and I don't know how long, but I knew about it. Lucky for me, she was married to a woman who had lupus. And so it wasn't brand new to our family when I did get diagnosed, because we knew of all the things that kind of had been going on with her, but it wasn't the best stuff that was happening to her. So it was kind of scary. But other than that, grandparents, they don't talk about things. Everybody just blames it on arthritis. So we don't know if arthritis was really something else. So.
I mean, to build on that, as you look back, are there different ways people could have communicated that would have been more helpful as you were going through the process?
As far as physicians?
No, as far as your family.
As far as my family, definitely, it would have been nice to know if, it would have been nice for people to get checked, because no one was going to go get diagnosed with anything. We just rule it as what we think it is and, kept it moving. And I remember my great grandmother, I remember asking her questions when she was in the hospital, like shortly, she was in a nursing home. And I was just trying to like collect some information. And she actually asked me why I was being so nosy. So, like older Black, they don't want to talk about none of that. They don't want to, let's go get some. Yes, my knee been hurting for 20 years, but I'm gonna go get some Absorbing Junior, some aspirin cream, and everything's gonna be okay. Don't ask no more questions. So if people would have looked further into some of the ailments that they had, it definitely may have been better. Ironically, in my situation, my mom got diagnosed after me.
Wow.
So for her, I think it was very beneficial because I already had it. And I had it for years at that point. So she kind of knew certain things to look out for, and that was kind of already on the radar. So I think we kind of broke a generational curse somewhat in that aspect by, me being open about it and her knowing what to expect through what I had gone through.
Wow. Yeah, Jinx. Wow. Both of us like that's a beautiful way to look at it. Like you're breaking a generational curse by just having conversations about your health. And I know you have a lovely daughter who is 3 years old and super inquisitive. And I know this is maybe a little too early to have conversations with that, but do you have conversations with her about like how mommy's feeling and how do you anticipate, I'm just curious about your thoughts about the future for her.
So it's so funny because before, like you grow up and you want to be something. Top of my list was a mom. That that was always my thing. So even long before having her, as being diagnosed with lupus, one of my thoughts was, how do I explain this to my child? I can barely explain it to adults. How will I be able to? I'm going to be sick. I'm going to be tired. How do I make it make sense to her? She could care less at this point. I'm laying on the couch. She's climbing on top of me. So right now, mommy's tired. She doesn't quite understand it. But then there's times where she'll see that I'm not feeling well and she'll rub my back, or she'll give me a hug. Or I think she's starting to understand my slow moments. So if I'm on the couch with a blanket, she'll come sit with me on the couch with a blanket. So I'm learning to kind of just bring her into those slow moments instead of trying to just keep her out, because it makes it easier for both of us. As she gets older, I definitely want to always be open and honest. For her, in her almost 4 years of living, I've been hospitalized 3 times already. So she's already kind of gotten a taste of like mommy going to the hospital, mommy going to the doctor. So she's familiar with that, and she will continue to be familiar with it as we go on. I will never hide anything from her as far as what's going on with my health. I always want to be open and honest with her. And then I want to make sure that she is aware that it could potentially be hereditary. So I want her to always be open with me about I don't care where the pain is, tell me everything. We will go get it checked out. You're not a hypochondriac. You're not, I believe you, so I always want us to have that open dialogue about my health, her health, and just know that, I support her. And I'm sure just like I support my mom, she'll support me.
I love that. Definitely. Thank you. That transparency is something so needed, as I said, with your grandma and to where you are now looking to the future. Thank you so much for sharing. We're going to bring you back a little bit later to share some more advice. Thank you. I mean, Dr. Michaela, it's so interesting to hear how different generations experience learning how to share your experiences with each other. Like it's very interesting, but
it's the first time I think I've heard mother being diagnosed after the daughter. So
yeah, isn't it interesting? So we're going to add another layer to family conversations, one where there's a bit of long distance involved. So please, everyone out there, put some purple hearts in the chat for Judith Mills.
Hi.
Hi, Judith. We're so glad to have you on the show today. And we're going to jump right in and ask you to share a little bit about your lupus story.
So I've kind of shared my lupus story a lot, but this part I haven't really shared. I was 16 when I was diagnosed. 2 months to my birthday, basically. The doctor didn't think I would even make it to 17. That's how ill I was. But just think of an American Horror Story. Um, someone told me I was cute. And so, though I was running track and being an active teenager, I was also running for American co-ed pageants, and I made state finalists. And it just happened that during the time of preparation, first symptoms, which was the hair loss, and we were like, "What's going on first?" I was like, "Oh, let me just cut it short," and then we put braids in it, and then when we were taking out the braids, it was a horror story. I started screaming, and the N in my middle name is for Nalamle, and my mom, as soon as I started, my mom was like, "Nalamle, it's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay." And that's when we're like, okay, so I'm dealing with these fatigue. I'm dealing with joint pains, and they keep saying because I run track. Now my hair is falling out. Could it be that I have Lyme disease, or could it be that I have leukemia? And so we just kept going back and forth, and they kept saying no, no, no. And it got to a point where the track runner couldn't even go up the stairs at school. The coat that was given to me the year before, a leather coat, which I loved, that my stepfather gave me, I couldn't put it on because it was too heavy. And I felt like my life was falling apart, especially because I looked like a picture of health and nobody really believed me, especially my track team. They're like, "Girl, you just looking for attention." And I was the anchor for the relay team. And it's like, "You're always injured. Like, what's wrong with you now?" So I stopped telling people how I felt. I just became very eternal, and I'll only share with my mom. So she just kept taking me back and forth to the hospital until one day after UCLA practice, well, we have this UCLA drill that we do because I was a short sprint. And right after, I kind of passed out. And my coach, he was in the military, a former Navy vet. He was like, "Mills, are you okay?" And that's when he was like, "Okay, there's something definitely going on with Mills," because it was just a lonely feeling because you look like a picture of health. And the crazy thing about it is I've never shared this part. I thought that maybe I was pregnant with baby Jesus because every time I went to the doctor's office, they would run a pregnancy test, right? Because I was not having my menstrual cycle regularly. And they were like, "Are you having any sexual intercourse?" I said, "I'm 16. My mother will kill me." Right. So I'm like, "Okay, so what's up with all this pregnancy test?" And my mom is just looking at me like, and I didn't know how to even react. It was just like, "I know that boy that helped me out with the groceries. I know he liked you," and was like, giving me all these type of looks. And I was like, maybe it's true. You talking to boys, you'll get pregnant. I was just going crazy in my head because there was no answers I was getting at the time until it was like Halloween. I ended up in the hospital for like 6 days. I went in walking. The doctors were like, "Oh, your hemoglobin is 4. You're dehydrated." They just gave my mother all type of bad news that she shared with me later. And I just became so disabled. I couldn't do anything for myself. Then they sent me home in a wheelchair and they told my mom to make me comfortable. And they were like, "Bring her back for 2 more exams." And at the time, they couldn't even get any blood from my vein. And we were refusing blood transfusion because we wanted to know what exactly was going on before we accepted. So I was like, "If you can get blood, I will do the 2 tests." And it was HIV and lupus. Of course, HIV came back negative and lupus came positive. And I was like, "Oh, thank God I can go back to my life." But that was the biggest lie that I told myself.
And you dealt with a lot since your diagnosis and a lot of different hospitalizations. And I know that you speak so much about your journey around, just all of the ups and downs that you deal with. And you still look amazing. It's one of those things about lupus. We still look amazing when we're dealing with this.
Well, it's my Ghanaian genes,
Yeah, I mean, thank you for sharing those intimate details and really giving us a picture, because it can be hard to share that. And you've really taken your voice to many places. You've been in amazing spaces, including speaking with your mayor, Ted Green in East Orange, even Cory Booker. We actually have some photos of you.
Look at you. I feel like that. And that's a proclamation,
resolution.
Awesome.
Amazing.
That's
So
amazing.
tell us a little bit about, all these spaces you're in. Why is advocacy and health advocacy so important to you and what you've been doing?
Well, three things, right? I have a mentor in Ghana. His name is Professor Dilly, and he's taken on a father figure role for me. And we had a conversation. He was like, Judith, there's three things. And he was like, the God you serve, a politician, and a doctor. What do those three things have in common? They basically hold your life in their hands. So policy is so important to me. Um, I know firsthand um, the barriers that I faced and many lupus patients and people in the autoimmune community face with access to healthcare, um, um, accommodations for housing, the average person faces that we also face as well. And I know that it's not just going to take awareness alone, right?
Mhm.
Change needs to happen. And
Mhm.
knowing firsthand what it's been like, just getting support services, whether it's housing or healthcare, um, policy has a lot to do with it. And, it makes the doctor's life even more hard to treat a patient. And so talking to our fellow politicians, whether it's your, hometown mayor, because Ted Green is my hometown mayor. I grew up in East Orange, and I wanted to make sure I go back and educate the community about, lupus and letting them know that this is a condition that can affect everyone. You don't even need a family history. Um,
So along those lines, you talk about bringing education back. What would you, prior to being diagnosed, did you know any specifics about your family history, and what would you have wanted to be educated about?
The only thing that I knew was that asthma ran in the family and eczema. I didn't know what lupus was. I didn't know that anyone in my family at the time even had lupus or past relative had lupus.
And then after being diagnosed, did that change, or do you
Yes,
find?
it's changed because I am very, very inquisitive. I remember when I was younger in Ghana, they will always write on my report card, inquisitive, talkative, inquisitive. I started asking questions. I come from a polygamous family. I'm from Ghana. I am the 12th child of my father. And so none of my siblings had lupus, but I did, after asking questions, I found out that gout ran in the family, that my uncle had it, my brother had it, and then also my nephew had it. But lupus, nobody was telling me about lupus until another distant relative told me that, you had one cousin in the UK who had lupus. She has passed, but she had lupus. And I was like, oh, really? And like, how did she go about it? Because, I was still learning.
Right.
And they were like, oh, she was going the homeopathic route. That's as much as we know. And then because I do this advocacy work, I do it globally. I go back to Ghana where I was born and, share my story to empower the patients there that, hey, it is not a death sentence. You can live a full life. You can thrive with lupus, right? Because the mortality rate back in Ghana, it's quite low. So just encouraging them. And through that, one of my nieces that I hadn't met saw an interview with me from, I believe, Joy News, and basically asked another family member, "Oh yeah, that is your auntie." So I was sitting there one day, and I got a call, and she was like, "Hi, I'm so and so, and you're my auntie." And I was like, "Okay, so who's your father?" And then as soon as she said her father, so okay, that's my dad's brother. So I was like, "Okay." And she was like, "Oh, I have lupus too."
Oh, wow.
So then
And
I was
so,
like, okay, so there's a family history of it. That's how I found out.
I mean, and I understand, and I think me and Dr. Michaela, before we met for this show, we were talking about the fact that being, first generation of people living in America, and our family roots being over there. Can you just share some of the just general challenges that come about with learning, to learning your family history, your health history?
Oh my God, I'm African, first of all, and it's kind of taboo talking about diseases because when someone is sick, they kind of hide. They don't talk about it. No one really wants to talk about what type of diseases run in a family. It's very taboo. It's like, why are you asking so much questions? Because even now, I asked my eldest brother, and he's like, what again now, Nalamle? Like, why do you want to, know so much? But it is important because I want to make sure that the next generation of males know that these type of conditions run in the family so that they can get early diagnosis, because I felt that it was a barrier. Even though it took 3 years, it was 3 long suffering years for me that could have been cut short if I only had known that, hey, we do have lupus in the family.
No, that would be so helpful. And thank you so much for bringing that into the space, because sometimes, we have my chart here. We don't necessarily have connections to the my chart in other countries to really help us out. And so it requires these conversations, and even the advocacy you're doing is allowing people to really see what lupus is, whether they want to talk about it as freely as they should or not. And even your niece coming to you is a good sign that you're doing something great.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Well, thank you so much. We're going to talk to you a little bit later. We're so excited, and we appreciate all of the work that you're doing.
Thank you.
Yes. Good conversation. Good stuff. And our next guest is going to be extremely helpful as we get into the science, the role of genetics in lupus. Please, let's welcome to the virtual stage, Dr. Ashira Blazer.
Yay, it is great to have. How are you? We're so happy to have you.
Good. So happy to be here.
So Dr. Blazer is one of my close colleagues, and she's doing such amazing work. She did great, amazing work in New York City, and is now the co-director of the Lupus Center at the University of Maryland School of Medicine. So she is running things, and we just really want to get your perspective as we have this big genetics talk. But before that, can you share a little bit about the research you're doing?
Yeah, so actually I am studying genetics in lupus, but I study a gene called ApoL1 or apolipoprotein L1. So this is not a risk factor for lupus per se, but it is a gene that's commonly mutated in people of West African ancestry, and it increases the risk of getting kidney failure if you get lupus nephritis. So what I study is, how does lupus impact you if you have this gene, and then also how does having the gene change the way that your lupus manifests?
That's interesting. Oh, a nice roundabout way of having this kind of conversation about kidney, lupus nephritis, and lupus. So the first question everybody I'm sure wants to know is there a gene specifically for lupus, and is it expressed the same in all people, particularly thinking about African American people?
Yeah, so I think this is really important because we see a lot of racial differences in who gets lupus and who doesn't. And it's very tempting to think that the reason for this is genetics, right? But there are no genetically defined races in the human race, right? So humans intermix freely. We have babies with each other. There are no gene pools in humans that are just sort of separate from each other. So there's actually no one lupus gene, and there's certainly not single genes that cause lupus that are just relegated to this race or that race. There have been 200 different genes that have been associated with lupus. So we actually think it's a drop in the bucket thing, right? So you have a genetic risk factor, maybe you have 1 or 2 or 3, and if you get a certain critical mass, then the likelihood that you develop lupus goes up.
Yeah, and I just can't highlight your point enough, Dr. Blazer, about this idea that really race, we know it's a social construct and it's really not a scientific term. So thanks for bringing that up.
Definitely. Super important. And I mean, But even further than that, though, we do see that are there some trends specifically when it comes to passing down lupus? Like if someone has lupus, does it automatically mean that their child will develop lupus?
So no, thankfully, right? So in the general population, less than 1% of people have lupus, right? If you have a sibling who has lupus, your chance of having lupus is about 2%. If you have a twin who's not an identical twin, your chance is 2 to 5%. If you have an identical twin, it's 25 to 58%, right? So, and of course, identical twins share all of their genetic information, right? And so it goes to show that this is not a fully heritable disease, because even if two people have the same genetic background, you know, the probability is less than half on average that both will have lupus.
Mm-hmm. Got it. And so that's so interesting, because so the fact that we see somebody that has lupus and their child might have lupus, it's not just a genetic situation. It can be something bigger than that.
Right. And it almost always is, right? Because it's a gene environment interaction. And of course, we share environments with our loved ones, right? So one thing that's really interesting is if you have lupus, your spouse is also more likely to have lupus. So assuming you're not marrying your cousin, there's some shared environmental factor that affects whether or not you actually develop it.
Thank you.
So interesting. And, you know, as we think about the research piece and we think about testing and genetic testing, and sometimes people's, you know, fear of doing genetic testing, maybe we do a better job in areas like cancer. You know, what do you think the role is of genetic testing in lupus? And, you know, do you think that we need more research to really understand better how to use this? What are your thoughts, Dr. Blazer?
For sure. Yeah. So, I mean, I think the thing to remember is lupus is such a complex disease, and our genes are really like the recipe book for everything that our body might do, right? And so genes that can increase the risk of lupus aren't lupus genes. They're doing something else, right? So it's really hard for us to say, if you have this version of this gene, you will definitely get lupus. It sort of doesn't work that way. And I think, you know, some people are thinking about genetic risk scores, meaning here's a whole set of genes that we know increase the risk of lupus. Maybe if we test enough of them together, we can give you some sort of a idea whether or not it'll happen. But even that's not 100%. And then the other thing is, one thing that we do know is that many populations of people are not involved in genetic research, right? So many of the genes that we've discovered that do associate with lupus, we've discovered them in European populations, or, you know, sometimes in Asian populations. And there's not a lot of discovery in some of the Black and brown populations that are most affected. And so that means that we may not know which genetic variants are most important, depending on the world population.
Yeah. Nice. Thank you so much. And this is super informative. I mean, you've answered all of these questions that so many people have and don't have anyone to talk to about, right? So we're so excited to see what breakthroughs the Blazer Lab was going to make. I love it. All right, we're going to talk to you in a few. We're going to come back to you towards the end of the show, but we've talked a little bit about research, and it's time for us to talk a little bit more about our spotlight on research, a special segment dedicated to clinical trial.
Yeah. So Spotlight on Research is where we learn more about the path to developing new treatments. And today we have Dr. Megan Lockwood joining us again. So thank you for joining us again, Megan.
Thanks, guys. Happy to be here.
Oh, we can't hear you. Can you speak up just a little bit more?
Oh, I'm so sorry. I said thanks so much. Really happy to be here.
Yes. So now, before we even do this, we're going to have a little quick quiz to imagine a world without clinical trials. All right. Now, I'm curious to see anybody in the chat. Please put it down if you think you know the answer. What was the start of the first randomized clinical trial? The first documented randomized clinical trial. Anybody think they know the answer? I'm looking in the chat to see if anybody thinks they know. I don't know. I feel like no. You all get, whether you guessed it or not. What's the answer? We got the answer. It is 1747. So that was the time we had the first randomized clinical trial. James Lind began a clinical trial to study the effects of different remedies for scurvy among sailors at sea. Nobody here wants scurvy, so we're glad he did that work. And it actually provided evidence that citrus fruits could treat that disease. Such an interesting study that to be the first one.
Yeah, and I didn't know until now that is why May 20th is the day we celebrate Clinical Trials Day. So, Dr. Lockwood, we may have a few people here who don't really know what clinical trials are. So, can you kind of share with us what your overview is of them?
Yeah, absolutely. So, a clinical trial is basically a carefully designed research study conducted in human volunteers to answer two key questions. Is this treatment safe, and does it actually work? And the process happens in phases. In the first phase, we call phase one, a small group receives the treatment for the first time, and the focus is entirely on safety. And then if that goes well, we move on to phase two, and the group gets larger, up to a few hundred people who have the condition. And then the researchers will evaluate whether the treatment is doing what it's supposed to do. And then in phase three, you expand to hundreds or even thousands of people across multiple sites throughout the world to confirm if the treatment works, if it's safe across a diverse population, that the benefits outweigh the risks. And only after passing through these phases can a treatment be submitted to the Federal Drug Administration, the FDA, for approval. So I think of clinical trials as really the bridge between a promising idea in the laboratory, like the Blazer lab, and then a treatment a doctor can confidently prescribe.
No, that's so helpful. And I mean, prior to the clinical trials, right? Prior to this process, these phases and things that lead to new treatments, how were treatments created or determined? Like, what was the process there?
So for most of history, and shout out to the scurvy study in the 1700s, treatments were determined through observation, tradition, and really far too often exploitation. Medicine was trial and error, no rules, no oversight, and really no protections for the people being experimented on. And I think we have to be really honest about who paid the price. Dr. Marion Sims developed his gynecologic techniques by performing repeated surgeries on enslaved Black women, Anarcha, Betsy, and Lucy, without anesthesia, even though anesthesia was available. The Tuskegee syphilis study deceived approximately 400 Black men for 40 years, deliberately withholding treatment even after a cure existed. Henrietta Lacks's cells were taken without her knowledge or consent and became one of the most important tools in medical research, while her family received nothing. And these are not just footnotes. They're some of the reasons of deep mistrust of the medical establishment that exists in Black and Brown communities today. And frankly, that mistrust is earned. Mm-hmm. It was really only after these atrocities came to light that our government was forced to act. And we have the National Research Act and the Belmont Report that established the ethical principles that we use today in research: informed consent, a favorable balance of risks and benefits, and the fair selection of research participants. So today's protections exist because of the harm that was done when they didn't. And as researchers, we carry a very serious responsibility to actively rebuild that trust.
No, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that and sharing the history, because I think we sometimes glaze over it when people are asking us, like, do you want to participate? It's like, oh, don't worry about all that stuff. We're here now. Being able to at least name the thing, I think, is super important, and to recognize that those atrocities led to the things that might make things safe, that makes things safer for people that might be interested. But, oh, wow. Thank you. And I'm sorry, Dr. Miguel, I see you going to ask.
I'm also excited to talk to you, Dr. Lockwood, but maybe you could tell us some more about what have been some of the amazing breakthroughs that have happened as a result of what research looks like today.
Yeah, the last several years have been truly transformative, and it's because of clinical trials. For only 50 years, there was not a single new drug specifically for lupus. And in fact, I was at a lupus conference over the weekend, and we had a woman there who had had lupus over 40 years. And she said for the vast majority of her life, the treatment for lupus was prednisone, Plaquenil, and prayer. And so it's pretty amazing to be at a place now where we have a lot more options. And that really changed in 2011 when the first biologic therapy was approved. And that was targeting a specific protein involved in B cell survival. That was really a landmark moment. And then in 2021, 2 more therapies were approved. One targeting the type 1 interferon pathway, the other specifically approved for lupus nephritis, which is kidney disease caused by lupus, and nearly doubled the rate of kidney improvement when combined with standard therapy. And now I think we're entering what may be the most exciting era yet, which is CAR T therapy. CAR T therapy, originally developed for cancer, is starting to move into the autoimmune world, and we're learning how to use it to essentially reset the immune system in patients with severe lupus. So early results have shown deep remission in people who have failed everything else. And I think this connects directly to our conversation today about family history. You know, we now know the heritability of lupus, as Dr. Blazer mentioned, is much higher, and first degree relatives do have a significantly higher risk of developing lupus.
I'm so sorry. I'm going to make you repeat that last line just a little louder because we can't really hear you on that.
Sorry. We know we're learning more and more about the heritability of lupus, particularly in first degree relatives. And that genetic knowledge is really helping to fuel more precise targeted therapies. And every one of these breakthroughs exists because people volunteered for clinical trials. And we know diverse participation is crucial. Lupus disproportionately affects our Black, Hispanic, and Asian communities, but these populations are historically underrepresented in clinical trials. And we really need the people who are most affected by this disease at the table when new treatments are being tested. So these treatments work for everyone.
No, thank you so much. And I mean, it's so important to name thank you for naming the different pathways. And I know that there's so many other individuals under other organizations and companies that are exploring new things and new styles of ways to treat different things, from CLE, from skin lupus, to all of I see there's definitely so much good information around that, and just trying to figure out new ways to be able to target the disease, because I know everybody's lupus looks a little different. So I can imagine treating lupus requires a lot of different options out there. So really quickly, I'm curious, like, what would if you closed your eyes, what would a world without clinical trials be?
Oh man, I think a world without clinical trials would be a world where we're just guessing. We'd have no way to know whether a treatment actually works or if it just seems to work. No way to identify dangerous side effects before a drug reaches millions of people, and no way to compare which treatment truly is best. Would be leaving patients and their families left to hope for the best and no science to guide the way. And I think that's why the work of clinical researchers, scientists and physicians like Dr. Blazer, like the work we're hearing do here at Georgetown, and the courage of patients who participate matters so much. I think every breakthrough really started with somebody saying, let's test this properly, and somebody else saying, I'll volunteer.
Well, thank you. It also means that we won't just be on Google trying to try bushes and random herbs that have never been tried, or like a family member of mine following an AI simulation, telling them what they need to do for treatment. So the research is important, the science is important, and thank you so much for keeping the legacy of research and learning, keeping it alive, and for the work that you do. We're so excited. Appreciate you. All right. Now, don't go anywhere. Let's bring our other guests back in so we can have some final closing thoughts. Yes. Hi, team.
Thank you, everyone. This hour always goes by so fast, and we want to just get your wisdom out there again. And we'd like for each of you to just share what you think would be important for someone with lupus to know, or something you would have done earlier, maybe even in the context of learning about your family history.
Ayana, we want to kick us off real quick, just because we haven't heard from you in a little bit.
Sure. One thing I would say is important to know is to not be afraid to talk about your diagnosis. My great-grandmother was a hypochondriac, like everything. I mean, and I was scared that the more I talked about things that were going on with me, the more people would think the same thing about me. Mm-hmm. And I've actually had those responses. Somebody mentioned earlier, like, well, what's wrong with you now? Or, well, I think it was Judith. And she was like, well, what's wrong now? Why are you always this? Every time I turn around, you this, that. So you just repress yourself and you don't want to talk about what's going on. And we have to stop that. We have to stop being ashamed to talk about what's going on with us, because this is our life. And other people that have other ailments, illnesses, diseases, it's okay for them to just openly talk about it, because the condition they have is more well known and it's more talked about. But for us, because you can't see it all the time, it's just, oh, you'll be okay. Go take a nap. Go do this. Go do that. And it's like, no. So be vocal. Tell your truth.
Tell your truth. I love that.
I always like to close off saying, when we have, panel style conversations like this, um, that family table, that dinner table where everybody's gossiping and laughing at stuff, I think that is where we should have the intentional, uncomfortable conversation about family history, keeping records, because, I remember every time you go to the doctor's office, they ask family history. If you don't know the ailments that run in your family or the diseases that run in your family, you can't answer those questions. And answering those questions help doctors with risk factors, right? So having these conversations will open the gates to us having better health care, us having earlier diagnosis when something is wrong with us, even if we think it's in our head, right? And also, when you think it's in your head and you're not getting answers, keep going and getting the second and third, fourth opinion if you have to, because it's not in your head, right? You know what makes Chanel or Ayana feel good. And when you wake up in the morning and say, I don't feel like myself, you need to, have that question answered. And I'm glad that my mother was my biggest advocate, who believed me, even though I didn't look sick. And she kept pushing and kept, taking me back and forth to the doctor's office without even knowing that I had lupus that run in my the father side of the family. Now, the asthma that I mentioned was from my mother's side of the family, because I had childhood asthma. My grandmother has it, and other relatives have it as well. But just these conversations can save lives, right? The thing about lupus and many other autoimmune conditions is early diagnosis saves organ damage.
Yeah.
And that's what we need to prevent. The organ, because once that organ, and sometimes we talk about organs and we forget about our skin, which is our biggest organ. But, we all know lupus can attack the skin, at its worst. So have these uncomfortable conversations. Instead of sitting there and gossiping about who's sleeping with who. We need to talk about what diseases runs in the family, so we can help save the next generation.
Yes.
So true. Well said, Judith. I want to pull on Dr. Lockwood and Dr. Blazer. So in working with people who live with lupus, what would you think would be helpful on their journey?
Yeah, I think I have two thoughts. I will make them brief. I think one is know your family history, but don't be afraid of your family history. I think sometimes people don't talk about it because they can't sit with that tension and that fear about what might happen. But even if you have someone in your family who has lupus, it means you're more likely than other people to get lupus, but it does not mean that you are likely to get lupus, right?
Right.
The risk, if you have a sibling, it goes from 1% to 2%, meaning 98% chance that you actually will not end up with lupus, right? So know it, but don't be afraid. The other thing is about clinical trials. So, I think when we talk about certain populations, we think about clinical trials in terms of risk and not in terms of reward. So I'm going to tell a short story about how, one of my friends from an affluent family, unfortunately, had a family member who got diagnosed with cancer, right? And the first thing she did was learn about all the clinical trials specifically for that cancer, call up the centers, fly to a center, and take her loved one to a center to go and get into the clinical trial, right? Because she knows that the best way for her to consume healthcare and to be on the cutting edge and for her family member to survive is to be in that clinical trial, right? When we think about this in certain populations, particularly Black and Brown populations who are most affected, we think, history of abuse. That is true. We think mistrust in the healthcare system. Also very true. But we don't think this is how you are going to be at the cutting edge, and this is how you are going to survive this disease. And I think that is a disservice. That narrative can become a disservice because get into that trial. Now you have access to care that you wouldn't have before.
Thank you so much for that point. And I think we've talked a little bit on other shows that being a clinical trial really does mean the access to the providers and the support systems. So thank you for that, Dr. Blazer.
And Dr. Lockwood.
I love that. I would echo all of what you guys said. I think the thing that's really been in my mind today is just about protecting your yes. Remember that your yes helps you to set boundaries, to prioritize your energy, and it's okay to say no. It's okay to just say yes to things when it aligns with your core values and what your capacity is in that moment. And some days you don't have the capacity. So I guess today I'm feeling like just protect your yes.
Such great advice. This is such an amazing way to start the season. Thank you so much to each of our guests, Ayana, Judith, Dr. Blazer, Dr. Lockwood. We so appreciate your wisdom and all of the incredible work you're doing in so many different spaces. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, everyone. I mean, I'm going to take all the advice. Protect your yes. That is such a lupus word of wisdom, definitely. But everybody shared such really, really great things, how we keep these conversations going. Thank you. And thank you to our viewers out there. We appreciate you. We love you. Thank you for supporting this show.
And Chanel, we also have to thank Biogen for championing the show season after season. I can't believe we're in so many seasons. For more information on lupus or information about participating in clinical trials, please scan the QR code that you can see here on the screen using your camera or going to Biogen, Biogen, triallink.com. The link is also in the chat, and there's just so much more research being done than we can share here today. If you keep scrolling on the site, you can learn more, and feel free to click the direct link that is in the chat.
Yes, and join us for our next episode on June 30th, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time for Effective Communication, explaining lupus to those who matter most. Make sure you check it out and join us as we really learn and explore ways to have these kind of conversations. And make sure you follow us on Instagram at For Better Together Lupus and on Facebook at Better Together Lupus. Feel free to make sure you share the good stuff. Share this video with someone who needs it.
Amazing. And now please put some hearts in the chat as we come to a close with some spoken word by Chanel.
Who am I if not wonderfully made? Each cell laid out perfectly, DNA weaving the heart of my family together. But really, how much do I know? What conversations, family secrets, and other things go untold? We hold our health so close to our chest. Be it because of fear, pretending the symptoms aren't there, thinking that hiding pain is another way to show your family that you care. Distance creating rifts, but see now knowledge of all things is a gift. It's a gift we can give that can help our loved ones thrive, can be the reason someone knows the best way to live. Sharing records is protection, leading to early disease detection. So open up, not just the family tea, but share the real things, all the things that exist in our family tree. Thank you so much. Please make sure we see you June 30th. Thank you. Have a good day.